My maid of honor hired male strippers for my bachelorette party, then demanded I reimburse her for ruining everyone's fun. I made her the entertainment at hers. I specifically told my maid of honor, Jess, that I wanted a quiet bachelorette party. Wine tasting, maybe a nice dinner, and board games at a rental house with my 8 closest friends. My fiancé Tom and I were both conservative, and we'd agreed neither of us wanted the typical wild bachelor and bachelorette parties. Tom was going fishing with his brothers and dad while I wanted quality time with my girls. Jess said she totally understood and would plan something perfect and classy. She'd been my best friend since middle school, so I trusted her completely. The party started exactly how I wanted. We arrived at this beautiful lake house on Saturday afternoon, had champagne and cheese, and everyone was laughing and catching up. Then around 9, when we were settling in to watch movies, Jess announced she had a surprise. She said every bride deserved one wild night, and before I could say anything, 3 male strippers walked through the door. Not just regular strippers either, but the kind that get completely naked and grind on people. I immediately said no and asked them to leave, but Jess had already paid them for 2 hours non-refundable. She said I needed to loosen up and live a little before being tied down forever. She actually told the other girls that I was just being shy and really wanted this. The strippers started their routine, and Jess pushed me into a chair, saying the bride had to go first. I got up and walked to the bedroom while Jess yelled that I was ruining everyone's fun. My cousin followed me and said Jess had been planning this for weeks, and told everyone I was pretending to be conservative for Tom's family. The other girls felt awkward, but Jess kept the party going, even taking pictures with the strippers and making jokes about how I was probably secretly watching from the doorway. She spent the rest of the night with the strippers herself, doing body shots and getting lap dances while my other friends slowly went to bed uncomfortable. The next morning, Jess said I owed everyone an apology for being such a prude and making things weird. She said she'd spent $800 on the strippers and I should reimburse her since I didn't participate. She actually said Tom would thank her for giving me one last fun night and that I'd regret not joining in. I just nodded and said she was probably right. 6 months later, Jess got engaged to her boyfriend Alex. She immediately asked me to be her maid of honor and started talking about how she wanted the wildest bachelorette party ever. She said after my boring party, she needed to make up for both of us. I smiled and said I'd plan everything. Jess wanted to go to Vegas, but I told her I'd found something even better. I rented a party bus and told all 12 girls to dress sexy for club hopping. Jess wore this tiny silver dress and kept talking about how this was what a real bachelorette party should be. The bus drove for an hour while everyone drank, and Jess got more and more excited. When we finally stopped, we weren't at a club. We were at Alex's parents' house where they were having their 30th anniversary party. I'd coordinated with Alex's mom weeks before, telling her Jess really wanted to surprise them by bringing the bachelorette party to celebrate with them, since family was so important to her. His mom was thrilled and had told all 70 of their relatives that Jess was coming by with her friends. The moment we walked in, Jess was swarmed by Alex's elderly relatives wanting to congratulate her. His grandmother pulled her to the front to give a speech about marriage while Jess stood there in her club dress in front of all of Alex's conservative family. They had planned activities for us, including Bible trivia and a couple's devotional, where Jess had to read passages about being a dutiful wife. His aunt had even made a modest wedding dress out of toilet paper for Jess to model. Jess kept trying to leave, but Alex's mom would tear up, saying how meaningful it was that Jess wanted to spend her special night with family. Every time Jess went to the bathroom, another relative would find her to share marriage advice. His grandfather made her watch a slideshow of Alex as a baby while explaining their family traditions. The other girls actually had fun talking to Alex's cousins while Jess was trapped discussing casserole recipes with his great aunt. When we finally left at midnight, Jess was furious. She started yelling before the bus even pulled away from Alex's parents' house. Jess spun around in her seat and pointed at me while the other girls went silent. She called me a vindictive psycho and said I had just ruined her relationship with Alex's entire family. Her face was red and her hands were shaking. She said what I did was nothing like hiring strippers because at least that was supposed to be fun. The other girls looked at each other and then looked away. Some of them stared at their phones. Jess kept going, saying I had planned this for months just to embarrass her. She said I was sick and twisted and that she never should have trusted me to plan anything. I sat there and let her finish. When she finally stopped to catch her breath, I asked her one question. I asked how it felt to be trapped in a situation she didn't want, while everyone around her said she should be grateful and enjoy herself. Jess opened her mouth and then closed it. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she said it was completely different because I had actually embarrassed her in front of people who mattered for her future. She said Alex's family would never look at her the same way again. She said I had made her look like a trashy club girl in front of 70 conservative relatives who were judging her. I didn't say anything else. The bus drove us back to the starting point in silence except for Jess sniffling in the front seat. When we pulled up to drop everyone off, 3 of the girls came straight to me. They hugged me and said they finally understood why I had left my own party. One of them said she had felt uncomfortable that whole night, but didn't know how to say anything. Another said Jess had crossed a major line at my party and needed to know how it felt. 2 other girls went to Jess and put their arms around her. They shot me dirty looks over her shoulder. One of them whispered something to Jess and glared at me. The rest of the girls grabbed their bags and left quickly without saying goodbye to anyone. They walked to their cars with their heads down. I got in my car and drove home. My phone started buzzing before I even got out of the parking lot. The next 3 days were chaos. My phone lit up constantly with texts from different people in the friend group. Some of them said Jess had it coming after what she did to me. They said someone needed to teach her that boundaries matter. One girl sent me a long message about how Jess always steamrolls over what other people want. Another said she was glad someone finally stood up to Jess. But other girls said I had gone way too far. They said involving Alex's innocent family was cruel. They said his grandmother was asking questions about whether Jess respected their values. One text said I had created real problems in Jess's relationship just to get revenge. Another said I was just as bad as Jess now. Some girls tried to stay neutral and said both of us were wrong. The group chat we all shared went completely silent. Nobody posted anything. I turned off my notifications and put my phone in a drawer. On Thursday afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Alex. His voice was quiet and careful. He said he needed to understand what had happened at the party. He asked if we could meet for coffee the next day. I felt my stomach drop. I said yes, even though I didn't want to face him. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near his office at noon. I spent the whole next morning feeling sick about it. I kept thinking about his mom crying and his grandmother asking questions. I had used his whole family to get back at Jess, and now I had to explain myself to him. I got to the coffee shop 15 minutes early and sat in a corner booth. Alex walked in right at noon wearing a work shirt and tie. He looked tired. He ordered coffee and sat down across from me. He didn't smile. He asked me to tell him everything that happened at my bachelorette party. I took a deep breath and started from the beginning. I told him about specifically asking Jess for a quiet party. I told him about the strippers showing up and Jess pushing me into a chair. I told him about hiding in the bedroom while Jess partied with them all night. Then I told him about the next morning when Jess demanded $800 and called me a prude. Alex's eyes got wider as I talked. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and shook his head. He said Jess had told him my party was great. She had said I loved everything she planned and that we all had an amazing time. He had no idea any of that had happened. Alex rubbed his face with both hands. He said his mom had called him crying 2 days ago. She thought she had done something wrong at the party. She kept asking him if Jess was okay and if she had offended her somehow. His mom said Jess looked miserable the whole time and kept trying to leave. She was worried that Jess didn't actually want to spend time with the family. I felt terrible hearing that. I told Alex I was sorry for using his family as pawns in my revenge. I explained that I knew they would be kind hosts who wouldn't let Jess leave easily. I said that was the whole point, but I didn't think about how it would make them feel. Alex nodded slowly. He said his grandmother had been asking him questions about whether Jess shared their family values. He said the whole thing had created doubts in his family's mind about Jess. We sat there for a while not saying anything. Then Alex finished his coffee and left. He didn't say goodbye. 2 weeks went by and Jess never called or texted me. But she started posting things on social media. The posts were vague but obvious. She wrote about fake friends who smile to your face. She posted quotes about people who stab you in the back. She shared articles about toxic friendships and betrayal. She never mentioned my name, but everyone knew who she was talking about. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't like or comment or post anything myself, but my phone kept buzzing with texts from mutual friends. They sent me screenshots of Jess's posts. They asked if the posts were about me. Some of them asked what I was going to do about it. I just said I wasn't getting into it publicly. The whole thing felt exhausting. Tom came home from work one evening and found me staring at my phone on the couch. He sat down next to me and asked what was wrong. I showed him Jess's latest post about people who pretend to be your friend. He read it and put my phone down. Then he asked me a question that I had been avoiding. He asked if getting revenge had made me feel better, or if it just created more problems. I thought about it for a long time before answering. I told him that watching Jess squirm at that party felt good in the moment. Seeing her trapped and uncomfortable the way she had made me feel satisfied something inside me. But now I just felt tired. I felt sad about losing my oldest friend. I felt guilty about involving Alex's family. I felt drained from all the texts and posts and drama. Tom put his arm around me and didn't say anything else. The next Tuesday, my phone rang with another unfamiliar number. This time it was Jess's mom. I hadn't talked to her in months. She said she had heard both sides of the story from various friends. She said she understood I was hurt by what Jess did at my party. But then she said something that hit me hard. She said she was disappointed in me. She said I should have just talked to Jess directly about being upset instead of planning revenge that involved other people's families. She said 2 wrongs don't make a right. She said she had expected better from me after knowing me for so many years. I didn't know what to say. I just apologized and said she was right. After we hung up, I sat on my bed and cried. I spent the next few days thinking about what she said. She was right. I could have just called Jess the day after my party and told her how upset I was. Instead, I pretended everything was okay for 6 months while planning revenge. That wasn't mature or healthy. I picked up my phone and texted Jess asking if we could meet somewhere to talk. She didn't respond for 2 days. I thought maybe she would just ignore me forever. And then on Wednesday morning, my phone buzzed with a message saying she would meet me at Riverside Park on Saturday at 2. That was the park where we used to hang out after school in 10th grade. We would sit on the bench near the playground and talk for hours about stupid teenage stuff. I got there 15 minutes early because I was nervous. I sat on our old bench and waited. Jess showed up right at 2 wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. She looked tired. She sat down on the far end of the bench, leaving a big gap between us. Neither of us said anything for a minute. Finally, I started talking. I told her that hiring those strippers after I specifically said I wanted a quiet party made me feel violated. I said it felt like she invaded my space with my own friends and forced something on me that I never wanted. Jess crossed her arms and said she was just trying to give me a fun memory. She said she thought I would loosen up once they arrived and have a good time. She said she didn't think I would actually be that upset about it. I shook my head. That was exactly the problem. She decided what I should want instead of listening to what I actually told her. She made assumptions about what would be fun for me based on what she thought was fun. She completely ignored my explicit wishes because she thought she knew better. Jess got defensive and said she thought I was just being uptight because of Tom's family. She said she figured once the strippers showed up, I would relax and thank her later for pushing me out of my comfort zone. I felt my jaw clench. I told her that wasn't her decision to make. I said I was a grown adult who could decide for myself what I wanted at my own party. She had no right to override my clearly stated preferences. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I brought up the $800. I asked her how she could possibly think I should reimburse her for something I never wanted in the first place. Jess's face got red and she said I made her look stupid in front of everyone. She said she spent a lot of money trying to do something nice for me, and I refused to even participate. She said the other girls were having fun until I walked out and made everything awkward. I pointed out that spending money on something someone explicitly doesn't want isn't doing something nice. It's forcing your own vision onto them and then demanding they be grateful for it. Jess was quiet for a second. Then she said my revenge party wasn't about teaching her a lesson. She said it was about publicly humiliating her in front of Alex's conservative family, who she has to impress for the rest of her life. I nodded slowly. She was right about that. I admitted that I wanted her to feel humiliated the same way I felt humiliated at my own party. I wanted her trapped and uncomfortable with people judging her while she couldn't escape. I wanted her to understand what it feels like when someone completely ignores your boundaries and forces you into a situation you hate. But I also said that maybe I should have just told her I was mad instead of waiting 6 months to get revenge. Jess looked at me and said she gets it now, but the damage is already done. We both sat there staring at the playground. A mom was pushing her kid on the swings. After a while, Jess asked if I told Alex's mom the real reason for bringing the party to their house. I admitted that I did coordinate with her, but I framed it as Jess wanting to include family in her special night. I said his mom genuinely thought she was helping create a meaningful experience for Jess. She had no idea she was used as part of my revenge plan. Jess's eyes got watery. She said Alex's family now thinks she's disrespectful and inappropriate. She said she showed up in a club dress and looked miserable at their anniversary celebration. His grandmother keeps asking Alex if Jess really values family and faith the way they do. His mom keeps apologizing to Jess for planning activities that made her uncomfortable. They think Jess didn't want to be there when really she just didn't know that's where we were going. I felt genuine guilt hearing that. Alex's family did nothing wrong. They were trying to be welcoming and include Jess in their celebration. His mom was excited that her future daughter-in-law wanted to spend her bachelorette party with the family, and I used all of them as unwitting participants in my revenge scheme. I apologized for creating problems in her relationship with people who matter for her future. I said I was sorry for using them that way. Jess wiped her eyes and looked down at the wood grain on the picnic table. She traced one of the lines with her finger for a minute before speaking again. She said she spent so much time trying to be the exciting friend who makes memories that she forgot to actually listen to what people want. She admitted that at my party she was so sure she knew better than me about what would make me happy. She said she thought if she just pushed me hard enough, I would break out of my shell and thank her later. But sitting here now after everything that happened, she finally understood that forcing someone into a situation they hate isn't helping them. It's just making yourself feel important while you ignore their actual feelings. She said she crossed a huge line by hiring those strippers when I specifically told her not to, and then demanding money when I didn't participate. Her voice cracked when she said she should have respected my boundaries instead of deciding she knew what I needed better than I did. I felt something shift in my chest listening to her admit all this. Part of me wanted to accept her apology and move forward like nothing happened. But another part knew we were past that point. I looked at the playground where the mom was now pushing her kid on the swings and said we both messed up badly. I told Jess that what she did at my party made me feel disrespected and violated in front of my friends. But what I did at her party was calculated revenge that hurt innocent people who were just trying to be welcoming. I said we both crossed lines that can't be uncrossed. Jess nodded and said she keeps thinking about our friendship since middle school. She said we used to tell each other everything and trust each other completely. But now she doesn't even recognize us anymore. She asked if I thought we could ever get back to that place where we trusted each other. I was quiet for a long time before answering. I said honestly, I don't think we can fix this. Too much damage has been done and too much trust has been broken. I told her maybe our friendship was supposed to end years ago, but we kept forcing it because we had history together. She started crying again, and I felt tears running down my own face too. I said maybe we've both changed into completely different people who don't understand each other anymore. Maybe trying to save this friendship is just holding on to something that doesn't exist anymore. Jess reached across the table and grabbed my hand. We sat there crying together for a few minutes before she said, "At least we finally talked honestly instead of pretending everything was fine." I agreed and we both stood up and hugged each other. It felt like saying goodbye to someone who died even though she was standing right in front of me. We pulled apart and Jess said she hoped I had a good life with Tom. I told her I hoped she and Alex were happy together. Then we walked to our cars in opposite directions and I drove home feeling empty and sad, but also a little relieved. 3 weeks went by and I didn't hear from Jess at all. Then my cousin texted me saying she saw on social media that Jess and Alex were still engaged and actually seemed stronger than ever. She said Alex's family had a dinner with Jess and everything went well. I felt genuinely happy hearing that news even though Jess and I weren't speaking anymore. At least my revenge didn't completely ruin her relationship with the people who would be her family. That night, Tom and I were making dinner and I told him about the text from my cousin. He asked how I felt about everything that happened with Jess. I said losing a friendship that lasted since middle school was painful, but I learned something important from it. I told him that standing up for yourself sometimes costs you relationships, but at least I finally set boundaries instead of letting resentment build for years. Tom nodded and said, "Revenge might feel good in the moment, but it usually creates more problems than it solves." I agreed and said next time someone crosses my boundaries, I'll speak up immediately, instead of staying quiet and plotting payback months later.